Welcome to New Horizons, a JLM news magazine that dives into how mental health has evolved during the pandemic. This broadcast will focus primarily on the pandemic's impact on college students, recent graduates, and adults, as well as what lessons we have learned during this long year and how we are working to overcome it. On March 13, 2020, former President Donald Trump announced a national emergency, forever changing the country and our lives as we knew them.
Today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words.
Since then, many have been struggling, whether that be medically, financially, physically, emotionally, or all of the above. The Pew Research Center finds that 33% of Americans are experiencing some form of heightened psychological distress since the pandemic began, and people started isolating in their homes.
My name is Sabrina Palazzolo. I'm currently struggling with making personal connections with people.
My name is Alex, and I'm struggling with socializing.
Hi, my name is Audrey. I'm struggling with anxiety and depression.
I'm currently struggling during the pandemic due to a little bit of social isolation and kind of anxiety.
I've been struggling during the pandemic because I work in an area where there's quite a few COVID cases, but I live in an area where there's no COVID cases. So kind of just that guilt of going back and forth between the two communities.
I am having a difficult time recognizing my life. I feel like I'm plateauing. I feel like I'm becoming okay with all the suppressed stress.
The effects and the frustrations of the pandemic are shared among the U.S. population, as different state governments are starting to roll back on mask mandates. This pushback might very well be a product of the pandemic's mental strain on people's day-to-day lives. Even the CDC has designed a page for stress and coping with the strain the coronavirus has left on our lives. Recommendations to take breaks from reading news headlines and making sure to exercise and sleep regularly is supported by the American Psychological Association, who said that 67% of all adults aren't sleeping right and 42% of adults gained weight during the pandemic.
What the study shows is that Americans are experiencing a lot of stress, that they may not be aware of that stress, but it's showing up in their behavior.
We'll take you through the perspectives of different Americans living the pandemic, how they're overcoming their mental and physical health struggles, and a look to the future on the long-term impacts of COVID-19 that will probably stay with us for years to come. Dr. Ryan Madigan, founder and director of Boston Child Study Center, spoke to us more on the effects of the pandemic on American lives.
The clients that we see are not mentally ill. They're struggling to live in a mentally ill society. And if society could understand emotions the way that they are biologically designed, mental illness would just more or less disappear.
The World Health Organization declaring COVID-19 a global pandemic prompted widespread layoffs, hoarding of grocery supplies, and declining morale. 2 months later in June, the CDC found that 40% of U.S. adults struggled with their mental health or substance abuse. Overall, 3/4 are experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression, and 1 out of 10 people have seriously considered suicide. Madigan's therapy practice teaches its clients to perform distress tolerance when faced with stressful situations that they have no control over. For instance, he recommends that college students who feel isolated at home should join virtual student organizations and club meetings around campus.
Having almost everything stripped out of our lives gives us the opportunity to be more intentional about what we put back when things go back to normal. And I think a combination of people simplifying and prioritizing what's really important, it will be a long-lasting positive impact.
To support those bearing the emotional strain from the coronavirus pandemic, Madigan recommends we encourage people to express their vulnerabilities instead of telling people to shut out all negative feelings.
There's sort of a dual stigma in this field around mental health. There's a stigma around emotions, and then there's a stigma around people who have mental health conditions. If you can allow sadness into your life to the point where you can tolerate it, feel it, figure out what it's telling you, you're basically immune to depression.
And while studies show that suicide rates haven't necessarily increased due to the pandemic, Madigan says mental suffering, trips to the emergency room, and those seeking out professional therapy have.
We're definitely seeing more calls. Our calls have probably doubled. While most of the world is struggling to find work, I cannot hire and train therapists fast enough.
Next up on New Horizons, a look at how people of all ages are actually coping with the stressors and isolation deeply rooted in the pandemic. We'll be introducing 4 new guests and following their journey to conquering the new normal. Before we left off, we introduced you to some struggles people are going through. People all across the country are feeling the weight of this virus in a number of ways, and many are finding solutions. When the pandemic first began, people were stuck at home and turned to the internet. Some started picking up video game hobbies, looking to different streaming services such as Twitch. Twitch streamer Will Neff even played with New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Neff spoke to us more about how Twitch has exploded in popularity since the pandemic began.
If you look at Twitch's DAU, daily active users, it's fairly, it was going up fairly steadily, and then COVID happened and it was like a rocket ship, like it doubled in the first few months of COVID. I think a lot of that has to do with the parasocial element that Twitch offers, where I think a lot of people are really hungry for the interaction that they would get from like a friend group or like a game night with their friends that they are starved of right now.
Neff, who suffers from bipolar depression, never saw a career for himself on Twitch. He soon found, however, that live streaming his gaming was not only profitable for him in monetary gain, but also emotional gain.
As someone who is a manic depressive and really struggled with depression throughout my adolescence, I really work hard to make my chat more worldly and accepting people. I spend, an hour or two every day off stream, just reaching out to anyone who has reached out to me and making sure to make myself available to those people.
As a mental health advocate, Neff emphasized the importance of seeking out social benefits from platforms like Twitch.
We are living in a pandemic, and even though we are isolated, whether it be a Zoom call, whether it be Discord, whether it be Jackbox, whether it be Twitch, you have to stay connected in an era of disconnection. For a lot of people, it will feel trite. It will feel like a frail comparison to any real life interaction. But even though it is not as satisfying, if you give it a chance, if you commit to it, these parasocial kind of substitutes can still be enormously satisfying, and your psyche needs it.
And with so much strain on mental health, we would be remiss to not talk about physical health. Which brings us to Eric Bravo, a personal trainer in the city of Whittier, California. Starting his own studio in 2002, his business had to quickly transition to a virtual format in March of 2020. Today, he has a thriving online business.
Coaching online is something I've always wanted to go into because we feel that we have an impact with people, whether we're in person or online, because of the information that we give and the systems that we've created for health and fitness.
Bravo asked his wife and partner to help him, starting with converting workouts with weights to workouts without.
It was too short of a time to know exactly what every single person had at home.
The American Psychological Association reported that 40% out of 3,000 U.S. adults gained more weight than intended, at an average of 29 pounds per person. 10% of that number said they gained over 50 pounds. Most importantly, Mr. and Mrs. Bravo are still human and know the physical effects of the pandemic themselves.
One thing to know is that it's all normal. It's normal to struggle. It's normal to fall off track. So to understand that they're not alone.
And while some people, like Neff and Bravo, are working through the screen, whether that be because people feel safer staying remote or are able to find a larger online community, others prefer a more traditional method, going outside. Cami Irene, who has struggled with chronic illness her whole life, has found a new way to be active both physically and in her community. She recently started volunteering with a horse rescue named Standardbred Retirement Foundation, which rescues horses from slaughterhouses. Irene, who suffers from severe migraines, autoimmune disorder, vertigo, and depression, which has worsened since the pandemic, says that the horses give her a new lease on life.
Well, it actually has made me think less about my chronic illness, although I still have to plan to get up earlier in the morning than most people would have to do to go out and help the horses. I look forward to my days that I go there. I usually go 2 days a week, and a lot of the times it's all I can think about is getting out and take care of the horses.
While throwing oneself into volunteer activities has proven to be beneficial for some, others look for entertainment that makes them feel somewhat normal again. Adriana Pham, a 21-year-old student at Chapman University, is craving what made her light up before the pandemic, going to live events.
Drive-thrus have been really great this past quarantine, whether it's like drive-through movies or drive-through concerts.
There are also many other themed drive-thrus around Southern California for residents like Pham to step away from the quiet of their home.
It's a change of scenery from being inside, and it makes you feel a little bit more like grounded, a little bit more connected to something instead of like just being in one room all day and things start to feel like they're not real anymore.
After having tested positive for COVID-19 in 2020 and spending 4 weeks in isolation, she sought out safe methods to make sure she never feels disconnected from the world around her again.
I think it was a gradual thing where like slowly I just realized that it's okay, and I think that really hit towards the end of summer where me and my friends would go camping more. We went into like the hills basically where we could see a bunch of the valley. It was really nice to be outside while not putting myself in danger. It helps things to feel a little bit more normal.
Coming up, we explore the future and after effects of this pandemic with 3 guests who are forced to reevaluate their lives and take a different direction. When we come back, you'll see how these people turned COVID-19 challenges into life lessons, ones they'll carry with them into new horizons. Previously on New Horizons, we met people who found different ways of coping with the pandemic. But what will the world look like after the term COVID-19 pandemic becomes just another chapter in a history textbook? We speak with 3 guests to find out how they overcame their struggles, pushing past this difficult time into bright futures that await them. Hannah McEachern is originally from Boston, Massachusetts, but currently lives in Scotland to pursue her master's in theater studies. After the pandemic hit last March, she told New Horizons she wasn't sure what would come out of her degree, since she quickly found out that an online education just wasn't her forte.
I didn't want to stay here, basically, because I have no one here. All of my courses moved online, it's tired us out and left us needing more time to recharge.
Fast forward to the end of 2020, and instead of choosing to suffer when she couldn't find part-time employment, Hannah turned her cards upside down and started her own health, hair, and skincare business, selling products from modern nature.
I've done a complete 180 in my life, honestly. Doing that was actually a really big help for my mental health. Having that community of women that I work with every single day has really been a bright light during all of this. I think this time that we've had, I've really been able to reflect, grow, evolve, and to work on myself.
Throughout the process of starting with Modern Nature, Hannah said she became the leader she never thought that she could be. Now she finds herself waking up in the early morning and getting out of bed to start a productive day rather than mindlessly scroll on Instagram for hours on end.
So many lives were lost and so much shit has happened, but for a lot of people, a lot of good came out of it. What I wanted for my life before was slaving away at a restaurant and trying to make ends meet with theater. That's not what I really want. I want to also do things that I love. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's to listen to your body. This has given us the opportunity to tune in, and I'm very grateful because I wasn't really listening to myself before.
Although Hannah has put her theater career on the back burner as she focuses on her small business, a few out-of-work actors actually created an online theater company in New York City called Russo Richardson Productions. Featured in the New York Times, Russo Richardson has received national recognition for its ability to produce theater during the pandemic, which Director of Marketing Gabby Rosenblum said can be traced back to her hard work, using her skills as both an actor and a publicist.
It was 2:00 in the morning, and she said, "Answer the phone, it's an emergency." And we thought, okay, something atrocious has happened. And she said, "Guys, we're in the New York Times." They did a weekly roundup of theater to stream in the coming month.
Gabby, who has suffered from generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder since she was 9, was not about to let this opportunity to pursue both of her dreams slip through her fingers. Since graduating with her degrees in musical theater and public relations from the University of Miami in 2020, Rosenblum was looking for her next passion project.
I would say that we're like the #1 virtual theater company, not only just in the country, but globally. Our production of Puffs was over 6 continents, and that's like the benefit of doing virtual theater.
Since then, Russo Richardson Productions has produced more Zoom theater, recently premiering their versions of Puffs, a musical parody of the Harry Potter franchise. What's next for Russo Richardson? Something Rotten, which actors can audition for on TikTok by May 10th. As for Gabby, she can't wait to hit the pavement to start auditioning as a newly professional actor. And speaking of performers, Sarah Boardman, a Disneyland performer, was going to pursue a career in dance after graduating from Chapman University. She thought she could continue with her studies with Disney's Aspire education investment program, but she got her benefits cut when she was furloughed in March of 2020.
Even those people that for us in the parade department were like iconic, have been here forever, do all the roles, are now laid off. I have a lot of other friends who are pursuing their masters who are also now kind of struggling, trying to figure out what to do.
Despite her financial challenges, Boardman said she's applied like a mad woman for scholarships and grants to pay off her tuition. With 2 more classes separating her from her master's degree, Boardman is determined to make ends meet.
I'm finishing my second to last quarter, then I have 1 more quarter, and then I'll have my master's. So it doesn't really feel like a time where I could just stop or give up or quit. Hopefully, the idea is that the grad school thing will allow me to have like a big boy job that will make it so that I do not have to perform at Disney anymore. But we'll see.
While nothing in the future can truly be seen in a fortune teller's ball, many are trying to move forward with their lives as best they can. Throughout New Horizons, we've shown you some testimonials of the mental and physical health struggles over 33% of U.S. adults are facing because of the pandemic. As seen in this episode, many handle conflict in different ways, but all are trying to take them in stride. To close out, let's take a look back on our guests and share with you their goals for the future. Dr. Ryan Madigan plans to continue to teach and offer valuable resources to his patients to destigmatize mental health. Will Neff also wants to destigmatize mental health using his platform to reach more gamers. Eric Bravo looks forward to expanding his online personal training business. Cami Irene dreams of adopting her own horse one day. Adriana Pham looks forward to going out and socializing post-pandemic. Hannah McEachern plans to come back to the United States to take a gap year and focus on becoming her best self. Gabby Rosenblum aspires to build her theater business and finally audition for Broadway. And Sarah Boardman is enjoying her life with her new husband and theater administration job. Finally, we thank you for joining us during this deep dive into mental and physical health. If you're going through a difficult time, please know that you're not alone and there are many resources available to support you. With that, I'm Maddie Fabricant, and this has been New Horizons.